We're good to go? All right, we thumbs up from Rod.
Okay, thank you. Welcome viewers. We are on agenda item number 4, approval of the agenda. Is there any change in sequence or removal of items? If not, I would entertain a motion.
There are none.
We need to approve the agenda. Oh, okay, we don't need to. Yeah, we need to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 5, announcements. We have our student representative update. Gentlemen?
All right, so a quick little recap of our agenda here. We're gonna go over homecoming, get some nice pictures for you. We've got a food service opinion survey coming up and a plan for the October 25th day when all the other grades are testing.
Do you have any comments on the homecoming activities?
I've heard a lot of positive comments about the homecoming parade and how everyone enjoyed it coming back.
It's pretty good turnout too. I know a lot of people were happy with the dance, stuff like that. We had a couple more points of concern and we're working on that for next year.
Have you heard anything from the elementary building?
I have not.
I haven't, but I was working a cranberry tour that day. And I mean, I was helping with the food and stuff, but I saw the entire little parade, and I know like everyone participated, so I can't imagine how, I mean, if you get that much participation, everyone would be pretty enjoyed to do it.
What were some of the points of concern?
So as far as the dance went, there were just a couple hiccups with announcements and music playing type of stuff. And we're just hiring that out for prom and next year. So, all right, as far as the food services report goes, next week, Brad and I will be meeting with Mr. Andres to put together a survey. As far as word of mouth goes, the food this year is substantially better than last year's food. We're happy about that. We just want to get some concrete data for that to present to you guys.
So the plan for October 25th, so everyone else should be testing. There's the pre-ACT, ACT, all this stuff like that, and seniors have nothing to do. So we had to come up with something for us to do and stay out of, making noise for people that are testing. So we're gonna start off the day. I know Mrs. Peterson emailed me and Caden, I think just me and him, or anyway. This woman is coming in from UWSP, and she'll be helping people who would like to be helped applying for UW schools and UW school. So anyone that wants to stay in the state of Wisconsin and go to college, they can do that. If people don't plan on going to college, we do have a separate thing that they can do, so they don't have to go to this announcement thing. And then we'll have some people come in, give some words of wisdom. Hopefully we get some veterans in. We'll get some past students, basically tell us what they've been doing ever since they graduated high school. And the voice of concern, if anyone has like anything that they want to change, and obviously we'll take it into consideration. And then after that's all done, we like to plan something to, like maybe relax us a little bit. So we decided if the weather permits on October 25th, and we're still waiting to get approval on it, to have maybe some recreation time down in the Riverside Park, and hopefully, get a bunch of participation with all the students. We're trying to incorporate everything that everyone would like, and doing our best. And that's it.
Questions?
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, celebration.
So related to what our student board reps just articulated, wanted to celebrate those involved in the planning of the homecoming activities during the week. There were a lot of hands in that. A lot of work went into it from a lot of folks. Overwhelmingly positive feedback from the community. The two principals have surveys out to staff in both buildings. I don't know if you've been monitoring the data as it comes in.
Yeah, it's all,
Any takeaways just from looking at survey data so far?
there's nothing catastrophic. It's mainly tweaks. I think people like the fact that Friday was homecoming day. At our high school they did. And we got out of my comfort zone a little bit, let the kids just have fun for the whole day. It was hard. But they seemed to have really good time. I think a couple pieces of stuff in my memory was that the parade was a lot of setup for a very short parade. And so maybe a longer one would be better. It's more time for I think the students realize that setting up a homecoming float takes more than an hour. And they had any memory doing it. And so you don't have to do it again, but the other kids do. And so getting more time from the students, just understand they had that time, they didn't necessarily use it because it's outside of school time usually. So I think they know that now and they need their advisors help more. But I don't know if you ladies remember anything different. Well, I just browsed it, there's nothing really huge about the whole thing. I think it was mostly a success.
Heather, what are you hearing from elementary staff as far as the engagement of the students? I mean, I have my perceptions from the day.
Yeah, I think they really appreciated being invited to all of the activities. I had students walk by me saying, "This is the best day of my life." I do think by the end of the day, that some of the 4K kids had, genuinely couldn't make it to the parade. It was just too much. So I think it was a great day, a lot of activity. I agree with Rod, just some small tweaks to the planning part of it, but I think they really enjoyed being part of it.
The word shout out, Mr. Nutt, what food services put together for that day.
Yes.
That was a big push by them, and it was, the weather, I don't know how you organized that, but that was.
A lot of strengths.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, yeah, so they did a really nice job, so it was a good day.
Yeah. I think that added to the ambiance of the whole day. The tailgate thing was very well received. The goal was to get all of our students in the community more involved, and I think with the folks all taking various components, several of them in the room here today that helped plan some of the pieces of this. I think for the first year back, mission accomplished, and we'll get better as we move forward with that data. Okay, the other celebration I have is our cranberry science program is garnering national attention. It was in Forbes magazine, and then almost equally as impressed was on Focus. We shared that out in the district website, but it's nice to see that drawing the attention it deserves. I know Lindsay during this time of the year, I can't even imagine raising kids and doing what she does this time of year and teaching full time, but well-deserved attention for the cranberry science program and for Mrs. Meister and her students. So my celebrations.
Okay, lot to celebrate here. Agenda item number 7 is the district administrator update.
So for my update for this month, I am going to, I'm sure most of you by now have heard about Act 20, Wisconsin Act 20, related to, the budget bill related to reading and literacy. So I felt like this was appropriate where I'm starting to hear, we had staff asking questions, a couple of community members brought it up, like, what does this mean? I thought it would be an appropriate time both for the Board of Education, and of course, this will be linked to our site. And at the end of the presentation, I linked to the DPI frequently asked questions. So it'll be a quick link for people to go on. So I'm going to go through, please stop me at any point during the presentation. You can ask me and the other administrators any questions you'd like to as far as some of the material and information. I will let you know, this is a work in progress right now. So what we're trying to do is stay ahead of the game right now, because there are some things that are going to be coming due here at the end of the year, the calendar year, where we have to make some decisions related to some of the requirements of Act 20. So Act 20, all of Wisconsin, yes.
Is it possible to get that sent to our, otherwise I just have to move. I
Yeah.
can't see anything.
Yeah, can you email it quick to?
It should be on your link already.
It is.
Oh, I think it's not.
Yes, we'll wait for a minute because it'll
Yeah,
make
I
it easier
mean,
for.
I can move, I just can't see it.
Oh, Julie.
I know.
think
Be
that's
in the
possible.
corner,
No.
that's just what
No.
happens.
Okay,
Do we need to refresh then, Deb?
Maybe that's what it is.
Well, no, I mean, I just opened this when I got here. So it wasn't, do other people have it?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
Maybe just email it
Oh,
for now.
wait. Oh, no.
Yeah, I'll just share it.
Okay,
Via
we'll give you a
email.
minute to pull it up.
Okay.
Everybody want it?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up once you have it up.
Thank you.
I'm at that awkward stage where I can see my computer screen right now with my glasses off, but that looks like a giant blur, so hopefully we're staying mirrored with each
I'm
other.
not hearing Rich.
Just the last name.
I think she's.
What was our last name?
I know it's hard to do that thing. It's not beginning. It's probably issues.
Okay, should have a link.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so Act 20, what it's requiring is that all Wisconsin schools are required to provide science-based early literacy instruction, both universally and in intervention settings. There are different timelines for different components, and I'm going to go through a couple things here. I did try to keep this brief, but there's a lot of information to cover here. I went over, like, number one is going to be what is 3Qing? You've heard of the 3Qing that is part of the component that's not going to be allowed under the science, and then what does the science of reading entail? And then I'll talk about what are some of the things that we know are coming and the timelines on those, and then what are we doing right now as a district to prepare for those components. So let's go to the first slide. So science-based early literacy instruction is defined as the following. This is right from the DPI website. So these are the components of the science-based early literacy instruction. Phonological awareness, the ability to work with sounds in spoken language, phonemic awareness. Now, some of these things are things that we had identified through data coming back on our testing, are areas that our students are struggling in. So some of this, whether there was Act 20 or not requiring this is some of the stuff we've identified through our data that would be something we would want to address. So phonics, the study of the relationship between sounds and words, building background knowledge, early language development, vocabulary building, instruction and writing, instruction and comprehension, and then moving fluency. So those are the components, the checklist, as far as what is the science of early literacy instruction. The reality is this: none of these things that you would look at this and say, I'm shocked that they would be part of this. Okay, this makes sense. So then what is this 3Q that they refer to? So this is right, can you go to the next one, Deb? Act 20 states that 3Qing instruction and curriculum are prohibited. However, and this is a big piece of it, however, it's appropriate to use context clues when you're focusing on comprehension, because comprehension is important. Now, the key being that it can't be a one-shot deal, is it's got to be a component of when you're focusing on comprehension. So I don't want to make it sound like 3Qing is going to be eliminated. It just has to be part of the science of reading and the science-based instruction of reading. So it's one of the components of the science of reading. Knowledge of phonics tends to be downplayed. That's what the reality is. There tends to be probably the phonics component in the 3Qing method takes a back seat. I guess that's a simple way to state it. So the 3Qing is based on gaining meaning from print using these three types of cues: the word meaning and sentence context, grammatical features, and then letters and sounds. So that's kind of an overview of the two components. Do you have any questions? Feel free to stop and ask any questions. The important parts are going to be the next couple slides coming up about what does this mean and then what are we doing right now. But please ask any questions.
Okay, so then my sense is that I know there was this idea of Okay, I learned via phonics, okay? But it seems like the more recent things were word recognition and
Sight words.
memorization, sight words. So would 3Qing be, would that?
So that's a
included
component,
as-
that is a component of that, yes. And
Okay.
what they're saying is, so the best reading instruction program is a comprehensive approach. And, you know, we've talked many times, students learn differently, right? And so that's absolutely correct, what you're talking about, the sight word use. So any other questions? Good question. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So what does this mean for the Pittsville School District? Okay, I'm gonna spend a little more time going through this because this is probably the thing that folks will find most of interest. So here are some of the things that they're laying down. Any child in grades K through 3 who scores below the 25th percentile, that's typically a level where we identify students for needing intervention, not necessarily a tier 3, but interventions that 25th percentile below, not always. We always want to look for 3 data points, but that's kind of one of our screeners. So if they're 25th percentile or below on this reading readiness screener, which is going to be a screener that's going to be used statewide, we don't know what that is yet. That's one of the things they haven't told the state. This is what it's going to be. So they're going to choose a statewide reading readiness screener, and that'll be given in 4K, it'll be given twice a year. In grades 5K through 3, it'll be given 3 times a year, statewide to all of your students, okay? So by July 1st, 2025, all individuals employed 5K through grade 3 are going to be required to receive a reading training that meets the following criteria. And this is once again right from the DPI page. Lexia Learning Systems, Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling Training, or another program that's going to be endorsed by the Center for Effective Reading Instruction, okay? So right now, we have a list of a few programs that we would be able to utilize. Heather and I and Cindy Schooley and Samantha did a webinar with CISA on Friday. The folks that are right now at CISA that are trying to get in front of this. And what they gave us a couple options for training for staff that they can help implement. Now, I'm gonna let you know, and you're gonna hear this is gonna be a recurring theme. This training is not going to be covered through any funding source. It's the expectation that the districts will cover their own training costs, okay? And it's gonna be all staff members that would be, so reading specialists, literacy coaches, teachers will all be required to be trained in one of these programs, and it'll be the responsibility of the district to determine which training under the ones that are accredited, and then to find funding for the training.
Is that a unit cost for training or something that we buy once?
We don't know yet. I'm assuming, Nate, it's gonna be an ongoing training, but there's a lot of things they're still kind of working out. And I think what they're hearing, Nate, to be frank with you, is I think the DPI is getting feedback that districts are wondering where they're gonna pay for a lot of these requirements that are being laid down, because I haven't even got to the bigger ones. So when I have an answer to that, you'll hear it. We just don't know yet. So school districts will need to review their existing curriculum and use that definition of science-based early literacy instruction to determine whether their materials and practices meet requirements. They are going to have a list of, and I'm going to do air quotes, banned resources and materials. They don't have that list yet, but we flat out asked CISA about the Lucy Calkins, and the indication from their component was that it wouldn't necessarily be banned, but it would be on one of the lists where you need to have supplemental resources and instructional components with Lucy Calkins. So I hope that makes sense. It wouldn't say you can't use the units of reading and writing, but you need to supplement to make sure you're covering all components of the science of reading. So what that means for us as a district, and most districts, you need to prepare right now. We're kind of preparing for something we don't really know for sure what's going to happen. And here's where the big key comes in. Part of the act, and if you read into the fine print, says they will pay for up to 50% of the cost of any curriculum. Now, if you read below that, it says it's a non-competitive funding formula, which means all districts that would apply would get it, but it says up to 50%, and it says it's a finite amount of dollars, and it will be based upon how many districts apply for the money. So what that means is the best case scenario is 50%. The more likely scenario is if there's a lot of districts that are getting new curriculum, it's going to be much less than 50% of the funding, okay? So that's a component too that we kind of know is coming. And a thought would be why we want to start planning this out right now and evaluating our existing resources and seeing what we need is, if we're gonna get funding, we need to be the tip of the spear because we want to make sure we're one of those districts that's gonna get reimbursed at least some of that money back if we end up having to supplement resources and materials. So that I touched on already, but DPI will establish a non-competitive grant program. So you can apply. There are even districts right now, and this was a little scary to me, that districts who already, so let's say they already brought in one of these science reading programs this year or last year, they're asking DPI, hey, can we get some of that money? Like, why are we being penalized for doing it a year early? And DPI hasn't said no, which means that could even further dip into that pot of money available. So it's just kind of one of those things where we have to wait and see.
Do you know what the sum certain is?
Nope. And I don't think they do either, Mary Ann, to be frank with you.
Okay.
So each school district must adopt and implement their own policy for promoting students from 3rd to 4th grade. Now, why that specifically, you've heard us talk about one of the reasons we have 3rd grade, that's one of our indicators, 8th grade math, 3rd grade reading, is that typically if students are behind grade level or below grade level by 3rd grade, it's more difficult for them to catch up at that point. So that's kind of one of those key indicators is where our students have proficiency in 3rd grade. So they need districts to adopt a retention policy. So some of the information that's been floating out is if a student's not proficient in 3rd grade, they're going to be retained. Okay, that's not true in its entirety. There are other components though that you would need to implement in order for that student to go on to 4th grade. It would be like an individual education program related to reading that you would implement with that student. Those are going to be required for all students who score below the 25th percentile, regardless, as part of the program. So each student who scores below the 25th percentile will need to have an individual reading program implemented by the district and overseen by the district, and they'll need to report that data to families and to DPI. I don't remember if it said quarterly. I apologize, but I'll get more information on that. So, okay, that's a lot of information I just covered in a short period. There's still one more slide of what does this mean. So, any questions about any of this information?
I just have one.
Yep.
So I hear you say that, there could be some requirements that maybe there isn't funding attached to.
Yep.
So that's important to know as we chat with, legislative folks and others.
Correct.
The concept of what they're asking, is there anything in the concept of what's being required that we wouldn't want to implement if there was funding that came with it to help support it?
No, other than I will just tell you this, is that, and I'm glad there were other components related to the retention piece. Here's what the reality is. Retaining a student, Hattie's did a meta study that indicates it actually has a negative impact on student achievement. So I am vehemently against retaining students. That was the one that was kind of an eyebrow raiser, but they then put in, but if you do these things, that would have been the only thing. To be frank with you, Julie, I think what you're asking is, does this make sense? Yes. Yes.
I think those are two important things. Being a board member is it just about assuring that we have resources
Yep.
to implement something that's good, or is there something they're suggesting that we would be like, if we could modify that, we'd want to modify it to this?
I would struggle with it, and I'm going to ask the principals to jump in, and Mr. Sherwood, if you choose. I would struggle to find anything in the list on the science reading to say, well, that makes no sense. Why would we want to utilize that with teaching kids reading? But principals, feel free. Now, of course, you can't disagree with the district. So no, there's no red flags in there that would be like, this just doesn't make sense. Julie, it's all, honestly, it's based upon kind of the timing of this is happening, here we go, and then the funding component that has a lot of districts saying, we agree with this, but, we're in a good position with some staffing that we have related to some of the requirements coming in about what you need to do as far as, there's a component I didn't put in here, and we don't know information about the literacy. Each CISA is going to have 3 literacy coaches within their CISA that can be utilized by districts. Priority will go to the districts that are the lowest scoring districts. Any district can apply to use these services of these literacy coaches within the CISA agency. Some districts that are the lowest performing districts will get their own literacy coach supplied by the state, okay? I'm gonna let you know we will not qualify for one of those positions.
So is this a grant that is applied for after the funding is paid by the district? Or is it prior to?
We don't have that information yet, Chris. All we know is that the reality is gonna be this, whether there's only 25% available or 50, like to follow what's required within the act, we're gonna have to look at potentially some additional resources.
The way it sounds is that the money would have to be spent first, so that they are able to analyze based on individual school districts and how much it costs.
So you would submit the cost of your resources. One of the things we talked about with CISA was we wanted to start exploring some optional resources. And I use the term resources. I think I've explained that to you before. I don't like the word curriculum, because I think people have used that to say curriculum is, well, I buy curriculum and it's everything we need. We look at it as like a toolbox, and we have lots of tools in our toolbox as educators that we pull from, so we use resources available. We would want to start looking soon, because the idea would be we would want to get staff involved in this conversation and explore resources to bring in and get ahead to the point where we can ask for some materials and samples so we can start exploring. So I said, talk to districts who are using these resources. I've been in communication with a former colleague who was in a district in Wisconsin that is a little bit ahead of where we're at. Last year, they brought in an additional, they had the Lucy Calkins, they brought in an additional resource that is one of the resources we're hearing will be on the list of approved. And they're very happy early on with what they're seeing on that program. So I've reached out to him to ask if he would share information from staff and from his district about how that's gone with the implementation of this particular resource. I think we can go next slide. All right, so a single reading readiness screener will be administered. That's what I talked about, 4K through 3rd at the beginning of the school year. 4K will take it twice. 5K through 3 will take it 3 times. So districts are required to notify their parents and families with the results from that readiness screener no later than 15 days after the assessment. And then Act 20 revised the required responsibilities of a district reading specialist. So those have been revised, and that's what I have listed below. So the responsibilities of your reading specialist, or any of your folks that your coaches within the district, your literacy coaches, would be implement a reading curriculum in grades 5K through 12, act as a resource to classroom teachers to implement the reading curriculum. That would be some of that tier 1 and tier 2 component where we talk about we want to push into the classrooms more than necessarily pulling students out. Work with administrators to support and implement the reading curriculum. Conduct an annual evaluation of the reading curriculum. Now that we're using our data, regularly, we will have data ready, and we'll be using formative data and the screener data to be able to kind of analyze in real time as we're going through if what we're doing is effective. And then coordinate the reading curriculum with other reading programs and other support services within the school district. So that'll be kind of tie everything together that we're doing, all those different resources. Okay, next steps for PSD. So we met with CISA reps last, and the two CISA folks specifically have been they've been tasked by CISA they've researched Act 20, and then their job is to reach out to all the CISA districts. They're scheduling individual webinars with each district to answer questions and to tell them what they know as of this point right now. The administrative team, we're going to be meeting tomorrow as an administrative team, and we will set a tentative timeline for our next steps, including a curriculum review of our existing resources. And you may recall we had the CISA instructional audit at the end of last school year. Some of those materials will be useful in this conversation as far as looking at where are we at right now. We'll use data to review that. Then we're going to meet with 4K3 staff to evaluate and discuss our current state of literacy instruction, and then what are the implications of Act 20. And we want to hear from our classroom instructors and our other professionals. So then we're going to have to determine a pathway for training staff rather soon, because if we choose to have, there were 2 main trainings, and Heather, you can jump in here if you remember this differently, because we covered a lot of material in that. There's 2 main trainings that CISA could support with, or you could just get the materials and do it as a district to implement the training. However, even if you do it as a district, this is where I'm telling you the cost. Heather, do you remember, I believe the cheaper of the two methods was $600 per staff member. Does that sound accurate? And that's for us to implement it. It would be $600 per staff member. The full implementation by CISA, I believe, was $1,700 per staff member that needed to be trained. So I say this with a little bit tongue in cheek because obviously I would feel a lot more optimistic about this people's sincerity if we weren't being asked to mortgage, district vehicles to pay for this training and there was some support for this, but it's pricey.
So this only goes up to grade 3.
Correct. Early literacy, yeah.
So we are not going to be working with our 4th, 5th.
They won't be required to have this training. However, we absolutely, between our instructional coaches, Mrs. Dinkmeyer, our literacy coach, Samantha, and our reading, our interventionists and specialists, we're going to use a holistic coaches. We're going to focus on K-12. It's just that training on science and reading is required for those staff at that grade. So we will involve everybody in the professional development with this because we all teach reading effectively, right? We talked about that before, we're all reading teachers. So we will involve everyone, but we have to pay for the training for those staff members that are listed.
So that obviously is training off campus.
No, it's the one option that was $600, Heather, I believe was a module. They would do online modules and it was like an 8-hour training, 8 hours, and then there would be additional follow-up trainings after. It's time consuming and expensive.
And it would be done then outside of the normal.
Yeah, that's what we have to figure out, right?
Okay, so
Yes.
I'm really curious, who is the term would be vendor? Is it like through the university? Is it through like
Multiple vendors. Yeah,
okay, a for-profit company that does this?
yes,
and
multiple for-profit companies that will be implementing the training resources and materials.
They said the trainer option with the time consumed and the amount of money is just
Yeah.
not worth it, so we need to bring in trainers for us.
Yeah, so we could send staff to become trainers, but it doesn't save the district any money because you still have to pay $600 per staff member. Plus, we have to pay several $1,000s to get our trainers trained. So we're gonna have to sit down and break all this down and say, all right, what makes the most sense? And the big one for me is they said they're already filling up. CISA is already getting booked by districts for these trainings because my guess is gonna be there's gonna be a limited number of vendors available that offer the training that we're talking
They have
about.
to provide they have an expectation, they have to provide enough resource.
Yep, absolutely, but you asked that question earlier about when would this take place? What our concern would be is if we don't get on this, where we can say, listen, we have professional learning days available in August, could we get it during one of those days? They could be gone where they just tell us it's gonna be September 5th or something after the school year starts. So we wanna get in, they would be able to fit us in, but we wanna do it early enough where staff can kind of digest this information and that we can get it to work with our professional development schedule for staff in August. Yeah, there's just a lot, and I wish I could give concrete answers, but there's a lot of things that could change yet, but we know a few of these things, it's inevitable, there are certain components. So determine our pathway for training staff, and then this is another biggie, determine any additional curricular resources from the approved list, which is not available yet. Okay, expected in January. They're expecting in January, they will give us a list of these approved resources, okay? So we can make an educated guess, which is what they told us to, of some of those resources that are going to qualify. And they gave us a list, and some of them were ones that were on our radar from that previous conversation that I had told you about from with a different district that had kind of started this process a little bit earlier. So we would need to make a decision. All right, are we going to need to bring in additional resources? What are they? Are they on this approved list? And then start to consider where the funding would come from. I see Pam trying to make eye contact. And I don't have the answers for Pam yet.
Mine is just spinning with the numbers.
Yeah. So, okay, what questions do you have? It's a lot. But I felt like, so the last slide I have on here, I linked the Wisconsin Act 20 FAQs right off of the DPI website to this because I want community members and any staff or board members to have a direct link off of the presentation on the website. We'll also get it up on our website for folks so they can go in there and you just want to kind of scan down through. They cover just about everything you can think of. There will be exceptions to bilingual students and students with disabilities related to what's required with the screener, which is common sense. But there are certain components where the students are exempt, but that is going to be few and far between. Like federal. So one of the comments they made in here to us was, one of the questions asked about funding, and it said at the bottom, districts will be responsible for looking for state and federal funding resources. Okay, that's kind of their cast of eye net saying, yeah, it's on you. You guys figure out where the money's going to come from for whatever's outside of that.
How many employees do we believe will need? I mean, 10, 12, something like that? I mean, not that others won't want to know what's happening with it, but what will be the actual requirement?
So our interventionists, our instructional coaches, our literacy coaches, all of our classroom instructors, our special educators, 16 for those grade levels. I'm in the ballpark, I know.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. Any folks who would be responsible, the one I don't remember, Heather, the paraprofessionals, I don't believe they were required to have the training. That would be something where we go, because they play an essential role here with our students, is that we would implement some form of professional development with our paras who work with students after that. And principals, thank you. Director of Student Services, the principal, I think that pretty much covers the group. I will do the training myself because I think it's important for me to have that knowledge and information, because this is going to be a game changer. It's going to be very involved. But I will say, Julie, to answer your question you asked earlier, is it a good thing? Yes.
Do you see that in the future, the goal might be that if you're teaching 4K through 3rd grade, that this is something that you would get as part of your college education? Like you would come certified in this?
Yeah,
Is
can you
that,
click on that again?
like,
That's
I
a
mean,
good
I
question.
understand that we have to catch people up, right? But at some point, if this is required for any 4K through 3rd grade, it seems to make sense that
Scan down to teacher, educator preparation programs. Can you read that, Julie, on there?
no, because I'm in the corner.
Oh. Will be required to meet the
I can over here.
provide instruction. So it's going to be required for teacher preparatory programs moving forward.
Okay, effective July 1st,
2025. So we need to do the initial training, but then after that point, teachers coming out will be receiving this as part of a teacher preparatory program.
Well,
So that's a great
well, at
question.
least it's helpful to know, is this something we have to prep for forever, or is it just a one-time kind of catch-up?
Mrs. Dankmeyer.
I just don't see anything about reciprocity, so if you have teachers moving in from out of state, it's possible that they won't have this training because it's Wisconsin law, and so out-of-state teacher education programs may not provide it.
Yeah, that'll be something we'll need to be aware of in our hiring protocol, is to make sure that we're offering, that to those teachers that may be coming in from other states. Yes, Mr. Chief.
I don't know, like, we're talking about the teacher prep piece, but the impact of summer school is going to be pretty large too.
Oh, yeah, great point. You want to talk about that?
Just if students are proficient in 3rd grade, their choices are, it's more complex than this, but it's essentially hold them back or intense summer school. And so that's a perpetual cost. Probably one you could argue because of work, but it's going to be, you're in 3rd grade, you go to 4th grade, we have June or whatever we designed.
Yes.
That's something that we're paying for. And those kids they would be required to attend, or the way the law reads, 3rd grade.
I would consider it to be kind of similar to the Jumpstart program that we do right now. That it could be rolled, but that's a great point. That was something I neglected to mention is that that's part of those requirements that you can implement with those students to allow them to proceed to 4th grade at that point.
Okay, so, but the FORT test is still going to be required.
Teachers still have to take that, this will be a part of the training, but they're still going to have to take the FORT test. Respective teachers will still have to pass the FORT test, So I don't think there's going to be like a test on the science of reading. It's just going to be integrated into the teacher educational program, the teacher prep program. But this has a lot of information. I mean, I was pouring through this for 2 days. There's a lot here, a lot of unknowns, but this is a great resource for staff, board members, community members, or students who want to find out a little bit more about what this means.
I'm interested to know, it says 4K through 12, does that mean that they need to take English courses in junior and senior year? Because at this point, they could potentially have their English credits done in their junior year.
There's nothing in the law that says they have to take class their junior senior year.
Yeah.
And well, it said 4K through 12 curriculum, so that's why I was curious if that was a mandate included.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. I haven't heard anything about that particular component, Alex. But I'll do a little checking to see if I can find out more information. They want to see do you have a cohesive plan for K-12 for how you teach reading and writing. Writing is a component as to they talk about, the writing component, which obviously there's a correlation.
Well, it sounds like we'll know more after January.
Yeah, and we're going to be, I would tell you right now, I'm not going to say we're ahead of the game. Some districts are way ahead. We're right there in the front, like we're staying ahead of this enough that we don't want to get slapped in the face on, January 1st with this. So I feel like we're in a good place right now to start evaluating our resources. That would be the one big component, and then have Pam work her magic to tell me where we're going to get the funding for the training and stuff. So, okay. Any other questions? All right, I appreciate you appeasing me by letting me go through this because I know it's not exactly riveting stuff, but it's certainly something that's going to play a big role in the district here moving forward.
Anything else?
That is all I have on the district. I knew this was going to be a little bit time consuming, so I wanted to keep the district administrator as concise as possible for this month.
Okay. So any further follow-up questions for Jason?
Yeah, will you be giving us updates now every month as to what's going on?
I will bring back a monthly update because I'm going to guess things are going to start moving rather quickly here. So yes, I can make that a kind of a standing update item for my report every month. And please feel free to follow up with any questions. We're gonna develop something tomorrow to share with staff similar to this, and they'll be able to see this. But for staff to ask us questions too, because I'm sure there's some uncertainty as far as staff what this means.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item number 8, consent agenda items. A, meeting notice certification. B, regular minutes of September 11th, 2023. C, minutes of September 25th, 2023 board retreat. D, financial status. E, winter co-curricular contracts. F, resignations, retirements. G, hiring. Any questions about the consent agenda? If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda items. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item 9, information only items. A is Guiding Coalition. Thank you, Guiding Coalition members, for being here.
All right, so we just wanted to come and give you an update about what we've been doing and what our plans for this year are. And so our mission statement is that we desire to empower the staff with the tools needed to ensure that there's learning for all. And that fits right underneath our pillars for curriculum and instruction for the students. So going back to last year, the 22-23 overview, everything that we've been doing goes along with these 4 PLC guiding questions. And last year, we focused on question 1, what do we want all students to know and be able to do? And then this year, when we get a little further into the presentation, we're focusing on 2, how will we know if they learn it? But then 3 and 4 kind of cycled through this all of the time. How will we respond when some students don't learn? And then what do we do if students are already proficient in what we're doing? So as we are working on question 2 this year, questions 3 and 4 are constantly in our minds as we are assessing our assessments, I guess, what I would say. So last year when we were doing question 1, our SMART goals were by April 26th that we should have our essential standards unpacked into student and family-friendly learning targets, which are ICANN statements, so that we can answer question 1. And I'll show you just a little bit of what that might look like. And there's an entire document that I think that you have access to, or it's been shared with you, that shows all of the curricular areas with those unpacked statements. And then the second one was that by May 30th, 2023, teams will analyze their essential standards of their K-12 content to identify the strengths, gaps, and determine where concepts and skills were taught. So not only were you looking at your own line, but you were looking K-12 to make sure that things were spiraling and we weren't having any gaps or any redundancies in what we were learning. So that's where we were focused last year. So, for example, this was for the health standards. The health standard 1, students will comprehend concepts related to health promotion, disease prevention, etc. And then there was learning targets for this for each one of the lessons, I guess you could say. So like, for example, nutrition in kindergarten, this is what the ICANN statement looked for this one, for kindergarten, first, second, all the way through. So they were broken down by standard, and then the ICANNs for the grade levels. And this went through for all different units of study.
After we did our individual essential standards, we got together as departments. So this is an example of the English department, starting in 4th grade, and then later we chatted with the primary folks, looking at where our essential standards for each grade we were focused so that we could identify areas that we might have gaps in the learning. And we made some changes and we had some really good discussions. And this was the result of that second goal, that analyzing the vertical alignment.
All right, so now for our 2023-2024 goals. So the first one is teacher will identify multiple examples of assessments that are aligned to their essential standards. So all of the staff members in the Pittsville School District should have all of their essential standards laid out for every single class that they teach. Those assessments will be included in their syllabus by the end of the year for the 24-25 school year. Each building principal that's an expectation that every teacher has those items in their syllabus so that it is a current and viable curriculum that can be accessible online for prospective parents, community members, and other staff members as well. The second one is the guided coalition. Here we'll prepare a presentation for the school board by winter break that highlights and details the work that's done so far to impact the learning of all students during early release time, and what we plan to do moving forward to support the continuation of early release time for PLC work. This is why it's super important that we wanted to touch base with you before that winter break, just because we want you to be a part of this. We're all very passionate about it. I think most of you guys stayed here from after school. We want to be here. We want to know that we're invested in this for our kids. So, for example, we have the standard listed here, and what we want our staff members to do is eventually be able to look at this standard, have your learning targets listed, but making sure how are you actually assessing that standard? And is it being assessed properly to what you're stating you're supposed to be doing in your class? So for instance, if in my life and personal skills class, develop a life plan including pathways to acquiring the knowledge and skills needed to achieve individual, family, and career goals. For each standard, or at least each learning target, you should be assessing at least 3 times. So if you're looking here, I have an formative assessment and an exit ticket. I have another formative assessment, summative, formative, and summative. So there's multiple times where by the time I'm doing my formative assessment here, check-in, I can gauge how many students are actually understanding the content. So when they do this summative assessment, I should have already changed some of my lesson plans and activities in class to make sure that those students who weren't getting it, by the time they have that summative assessment, they should be at proficient or mastering that skill. Again, this is huge, and even what Jason was just saying with Act 20, we're all reading teachers, right? So even having more time to be able to have staff members analyzing what they're doing in the classroom to make sure that it's, adequate for students and make sure that they're at that proficient and mastery level, it's important. I think it's important work as well. You want to add on to any of that? Did I miss anything?
No. Okay. So I think that segues pretty well into kind of what we've laid out as the steps for helping to get staff and ensure staff are capable of moving from the list of essential standards to analyzing assessment level data by essential standards that they've already identified, and then ensuring that students are reaching proficiency. So we've tried to lay out just like 5 steps. A couple of them we've already done last year. To help guide staff in that direction. So last year we really worked on step 1, which was listing the course essential standards. Okay. Sounds like basic work, but it needed to be done in order to progress. And we're kind of the belief you can't expect what you haven't instructed and what you haven't provided resources and time to do. And so we feel like we did that last year during early release time. So now we want to move from that to a more robust evaluation of our assessments and of our student learning data and therefore our teaching. So step 2 is identifying where and how essential standards are being assessed. That's what Alyssa just showed you, simply having a list of your essential standard being assessed at least 3 times is our goal for each essential standard, because if we truly feel it needs to be mastered, then it's not just a test once and hope that they still retain it later, right? We're choosing, more or less like 5 essential standards per course. Is that fair to say? Maybe longer at the elementary level. And so if those are your 5 key things, it's really essential that you're assessing that for mastery multiple times. We're hoping that staff is able to work through that pretty quickly in the first month or 2. And then really the meat and potatoes of our goal here is that step 3, by assessment, identifying which questions are actually assessing which essential standards, right? We don't need an assessment per standard because an assessment might cover more than one standard and probably should. But we need to know, is that question actually giving you information that you're going to be able to use in a timely fashion? Step 4, then once we're at that point, we want to be able to choose the unit or topic you're currently assessing, and we want teachers as a guided or as a PLC team to be analyzing student level data by question. And since they've already sorted their question by skill, therefore they're looking at by skill. And then they're talking about and documenting who's basic, who's proficient, who's exceeding. And then step 5, analyzing your teaching. What do those results tell you about your teaching? So let's focus on what does it tell us about student learning? And I think it's important to think about, what does it tell you about your teaching? Was your teaching effective or wasn't it? And what do you need to adjust in your teaching if a lot of students are below basic or basic on the skills? Something in your teaching needs to be improved, as opposed to the lens on student learning.
So last Wednesday, Career and Technical Education staff met during our early release time, and we agreed to bring in relevant data for our junior career financial literacy class. They took a test on paychecks and taxes basics. And there was four questions that we had at least 40% of the students get incorrect. So we took that information and we talked about it. Okay, how did you cover this in your class? And what do you think you missed? Was it the teacher? Was it the student misunderstanding it? What does your formative assessment say that are these the students who you were tracking earlier that didn't get it by the summative test? So now, that, even though that test we're moving on, those 4 students those 4 questions, we pulled in the students that didn't get those correct and created a test just with those questions that they missed. Did not create a whole new test, and reevaluated them. So we used that early release time for all 4 of us to come together and talk about what are we doing in class and how can we not just forget these kids, because they need to know the difference between earned and unearned income. You know, they need to know the difference when they're applying for a job, what's the I-9, what's a W-2, and what's a W-4, those types of things. So that time, we wouldn't have been able to do all cohesively, make sure that we're all on the same page, understanding this is what this early release time is for. And now those kids are now proficient in that entire paycheck and taxes unit.
Questions for us?
Very good presentation. Thank you.
The one thing to think about with all of these steps, this is continual working.
Right.
You know, just because we got the essential standards down doesn't mean that, you know, as new things come up, like, Act 20, that we are not gonna go back in and reassess whatever standards we've got. So this is a constant working of the curriculum, of the learning of the students.
So we hope you see the value in early release time, because I know the kids do, and that's really what the question is. Ensuring learning for all. And I think if we've got great staff members here in Pittsville, and if they're going to follow these steps, then we won't have that 25% below proficient in reading, and our grade work.
And in the future years, we're hoping we're camp at steps 4 and 5, where we're just diving into data all the time, and we are occasionally revisiting our standards, but we're really doing more meaningful work down the line once we've laid a good, solid foundation for that work.
Developing better assessments along the way too.
I appreciate the approach of making sure folks get it before you move on necessarily to the next thing, not just forgetting those things. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying active too.
I'm taking some macaroni on my home.
Sounds good. Okay. Under information only items, next, building of the goals, public principles.
That's a supplement thing. We love it. It's a really cool background. I want to raise it.
All right, so we are gonna update you on our school goals today. So the building and the grade level goals come from the student success pillar. So we've always had school goals, but now we are strategically putting them in a district pillar. So we're focusing on the student success goals. So every year we assess our progress. We look at our test and board exam and our ACT data, and we set goals from there. So that's exactly what we did in August in-service. Each building did their own work looking at their board exam and the other data, and we set our goals.
So at the high school, we had done this for a couple of years, but we hadn't nested underneath the district goals. We didn't have the strategic plan in place yet. So looking at the student success goal being college and career and community ready, it really flowed nicely from what we had done the year before. But in small groups, we looked at what we'd done the year before, and if you remember, that was to have a 21 composite on the ACT, which is a stretch goal because we had a 20 the year before. And then to be proficient or advanced on the employability skills rubric, because we never felt like ACT proficiency was enough. Right, you know lots of stuff, but are you also ready for the world outside of high school? We liked that goal, but we didn't necessarily love it. There was more that could be done in small groups, and other groups came back saying, like, let's just keep with what we did. They came back with, let's focus on this area, that area. We narrowed it down, really got into reading. Our school data, and I can share any data with you that you folks want. There's one slide here that's going to show you the reading data specifically. But the reading data really pops as something that if we were to focus on this data, we'd have large dividends for our students. It unlocks everything else. You can read well, you do math well, you do everything in this wing well, and employers are asking for that. So the groups came up with a focus on reading. It wasn't unanimous, but the groups were able to convince each other that that was the right way to focus, and then also on communication too. So I'll show you that. So here's the goal. Goal A is on reading, goal B is on communication. So goal A, all students in grades 9 through 11 will show growth in reading proficiency on state testing in the spring of 2024. So I'm gonna stop for a second. The key word here is growth, and we're talking about reading proficiency. We don't measure seniors, they don't take a state test, we can't include them in that, we include the communication goal, we still teach them reading, it's just measuring this goal, what we can actually measure. And we're looking at growing in the reading proficiency. We want, by the way, the reason we always focus on growth is that everybody has different vagaries, right? Students that are barely at 6th grade level, saying they're grade level proficient, it's lovely, it's not going to happen yet, there's a lot of growing that's happening. Some students are advanced, there's students that are only missing a couple questions in ACT, right? So setting a goal for everybody advanced by percentage is also very hard to do, some go high levels of growth. So every grade level demonstrate at least 14% growth in reading proficiency in the pre-ACT or ACT. That is a big stretch goal, right? The reason is that we want at least 60% of every grade to be proficient in reading. Can't say that's gonna happen, we're gonna do the very best we can, because it's really, really important to us. That's a lot of growth. But we have a lot of stuff in place to make that happen, because we're. The next one's on communication. This came out of a conference that Jordan Rayburn and Emily Kotoviak and I went to, where what the ACT folks are being told over and over by employers is that communication is the thing they're looking for the most in their new employees, but it's the thing that's tested least in the ACT. The ACT does not require you to actively listen or give any speeches. The writing piece is barely graded, it's not part of the composite score. And so, but employers are saying, you want to work here, you need to communicate effectively. And that includes active listening, includes writing logically. And so we had that employability skills rubric, really like that thing that we use for our seniors. We like having that go down through the grades and say, if you're gonna be employable, which is another way of saying being a good citizen in society, then you should be someone who communicates well. So we're gonna continue to focus on that. We want all of our students to be proficient or advanced in that, every one of them. So why reading? Well, reading is a foundational skill. Key to success in nearly every area. We understand that some students aren't going to read large fiction novels their whole lives after high school. We hope they do. Studies say that less than 40% of America ever reads a book after high school. And so fiction reading is an important skill, but we're talking largely about non-fiction reading when it comes to career and community success. Reading scores have been in steady decline. That's both locally and nationally. The country is facing about 50% proficiency among its graduates. Average reading level of a citizen in the United States is 8th grade. So we have some issues. Why? Studies are showing that electronic devices are not helping. They're taking a lot of our attention. We have a phone in our hands instead of a book, and I think I'm guilty, right? This is taking a lot of our attention. COVID-19 exacerbated weaknesses that already exist in our system, and other reasons too. Just things that are happening in our society, making reading much harder for students to focus on. We are not going to accept that as a high school. We're going to continue to focus on reading, and we're going to get better at teaching reading, because we know that'll help our students in whatever they do, college, career, when they vote, when they sit on juries, all those things involved. So here's some hard to look at data. I'm going to interpret this for you the best I can, because I don't think I did the best job making this graph. So what we have is every grade. This is where they're at this year. The tests are largely from last year. This here is Ames Web. Stops right there. We get that for 8th grade. This is STAR. They don't correlate very well, as you can tell. And so it's not like students lost proficiency. It's just a matter of STAR is a harder test. So that's this one right here. STAR is owned by Renaissance. That's one we use in the high school, and then Ames Web is Pearson. So different tests. You can tell that they do have some correlation with our statewide data, though. This is forward. And then when you get into here, then we move into pre-ACT and ACT. You can tell that when forward detects a drop in proficiency, so does Ames Web. And this is a pretty alarming one we're tracking. And then we're also seeing at the high school that even with our largest test, which is forward for the 9th graders, when they took in 8th grade, and the pre-ACT, less than half our students are proficient in reading. I want to warn you, any of you that work with data in your civilian and your other jobs, know that bad data in equals bad analysis out. Close your ears, guys. I don't know that seniors always take these tests very seriously at the end of their junior year. I'm aware of that. So this is not their level of proficiency. I do not buy this data here. Our students about to graduate are not 37% proficient in reading. We have other data suggests that's not the case. But this here is a problem. And longitudinally, when we track this class back, we see that they have existed at about that level. And so to get them 14% more proficient, get them up to 60%, that's better. Still not good enough, but it's much better.
So that data is proficiency.
Yeah, it's just proficiency. So we're based on about 35th percentile, or what the forward says basic or below basic. The ACT says college and career ready. It's different ways of using that word.
Thank you.
There's a bit of apples and oranges going on here. You get like 6 different tests on this graph, but I just wanted to get a common picture of where kids are at for proficiency. Okay, so what are we doing? There's a lot on this slide, and I hope you all have a copy of it too. I won't read this one to you. Just know that we're doing a lot. You never intervene your way out of reading problems and take your students that, your 10 or 15 students are consistently below grade level and try to fix them by having them in intervention. That will not solve this problem, but to that student, that intervention does matter. And students that work with Mr. Flores for a semester or more show more than a year's worth of growth. That was shown all through last year. It's just that personal attention. He averaged well over a 50 SGP, that's the student growth percentile. It shows that just working with him as much as possible makes them better at reading. So it's very important to them. It will not solve our overall data, but those students deserve to be at least as close to proficiency as they can before they graduate. Just a shout out to a really good sub. Do you want to be Mrs. Smith right now? We have so we have a really good substitute working with Mrs. Jones' students right now. And Mrs. Dinkmeyer worked with them before, so just a slew of really good teachers. That makes a big difference. A teacher can get a year or two of growth in just a semester and do a really good job, and I have all the confidence in the world in her and Mrs. Jones coming back. But really the key right here is that, set a building goal, and it's a wonderful thing to have a PowerPoint at the beginning of the year and for the administrator to come to a board meeting and talk about, but what does it matter for students tomorrow morning? Well, the teachers set their goals based on this, and that's what they get evaluated on. So the majority of our teachers, their student learning objectives, which are what they report to me or to their supporting your mentor, those are all linked to reading. And so what they're focusing on, what they're measuring, what they're teaching their students on is reading, whether they're reading teachers or not. So looking at nonfiction reading or writing, ways to get better at reading, and often that means more reading in the classroom. We do need to read more in school than we do now, as that's been shown over and over. So this here is really the meat where we set a building goal, now teachers set their individual goals, and now students find themselves reading more in class. More tutoring at the high school and even working on more tutoring at the middle school. That is students working with students has been shown to be effective if the tutors actually get trained to do so. And so that's National Honor Society in the high school, and then we have the young lady starting a tutoring group with Mr. Klein's help at the middle school, hopefully starting next week. Our book studies focused on this largely, and so especially starting on the next unit, which can focus on assessment. And then science and social studies specifically have been meeting with a series of meetings about nonfiction reading. We know the English teachers are going to focus a lot, but not exclusively on fiction. So then where do you learn how to read nonfiction well? Well, it's in this building, but the students here would also like to work with tools and cooking, things like that too. So it can be in science and social studies, which is a great way to learn those subjects. Okay, so these teachers reported to me that they are going to have SLOs that focus on reading. So student learning objectives, where they will say, and I don't have these SLOs for you because they have not collected the baseline data yet. I will show them to you once they're made, but they have time to do that until November. But in science, and half in social studies, and family consumer science, and instructional coaching, all of those professional staff members are setting their goals this year to make sure that things they do make students better at reading. And all these teachers then report out whether it worked or not at the end of the year. Sometimes we meet our SLOs, sometimes we don't. There are also some SLOs that are focused on writing, which is a link between the reading goal and communication goal. Okay, why communication? So I did already go over most of this. What I would just say then is that we plussed up that area of the rubric quite a bit. There was some thinner language in there that we wanted to make more robust, so it's on the next slide, I'll show you. So what this says, in order to be proficient or advanced in communication skills, what you have to do as a student is effectively adjust your communication approach for target audience, purpose, and situation. This would be very much like Brad. If he has a tour group on this Splash Red tour that is all fifth graders, maybe don't use the big words, right? Maybe and notice when you're losing the students. And so adjusting communication with the employers everybody's looking for. And then modeling behaviors to show active listening. We are actively teaching this now, and other teachers may have been teaching it just tangentially, but actually purposely teaching how to square your shoulders to the person that's speaking, how to make sure there's no electronic device in your line of sight at that time, how to make sure that you're listening when people are speaking. It's such an important skill. It's one that will get you a job if you're good at it, right? Organizing written written messages, information, logical and helpful manner. This is a quick bullet point to summarize what we do in all of our essay writing in school, right? This is where you fight back against the AI that the students can use to make sure that they're handwriting in class and able to do that in a logical way. Student asks appropriate questions. That's part of communication. That's one that Ms. Meisner took right from her agricultural and CTE standards. And then reflects upon their ability to speak, write, listen, and then make necessary adjustments. These words were not in this last year. So you could reflect on not being a very good communicator and meet the goal. Now you got to reflect on it and do some So the last thing I want to say about this, and I'll turn over to Mrs. Friday for the elementary school, is that without the communication goal, just focusing on reading would be a little disrespectful to some of our teachers. I don't really want students reading in PE class. I want kids to read a lot in school, but I like them to sweat in PE class. That doesn't involve a lot of reading. But while you're sweating and playing volleyball or whatever, you are communicating, hopefully. So having a communication goal makes sure that every staff member has a way in to be part of one of these two goals at least, right? And often in this building too, there's a lot of communication that happens over in the CTE building. So having this is very helpful on the communication piece. We started requiring speech as a graduation requirement a couple years ago. And so the classes that were grandfathered in have graduated. So now to graduate from Pittsville High School, you have 4 speech options. 2 are speech classes, one's dual credit. One's oral and interpersonal skills. There's less public speaking in that, but still some. That's also dual credit. And then there's the primary science class. You can take any of those classes where you have to do some speaking, and then you can graduate from our school. If you ever talk to somebody once they graduate, like, what do you wish you would learn in high school? This one comes up the most. I want to be able to speak well in front of others, because every job, every college class requires it. Why didn't I learn that in school? It's good school, isn't it? And then every teacher is now encouraged to incorporate language from the employability skills in their presentation rubrics, and pretty much every class requires some level of presentation. So, and then some teachers use this as a logo, which I think is my next one. So ELA is focused on writing, so that's that third bullet point, and then CPE, PE, and then one of social studies teachers, the one who teaches the seniors, is focusing on communication skills in general. So if all teachers focus on their SLOs, all students result in better skills because of that focus, then we should move forward in both these areas, and it's really important for our students. So that's where I.
All right, I think I went over this a little bit before, but in July, we had CISA 5 come in and work with a group of willing teachers over the summer, and she kind of gave us the basic overview of how to get into WiseDash, how to start looking for data, how to analyze it. We didn't get into that a lot, but just kind of that overview. And then in August, those teachers were our teacher leaders, and they facilitated the small group work. We made a big school goal, but then we also looked at 4K2 being a building, 3-5 being a building, and 6-8 being a building. And so what the teachers did in that group work during that time is they looked at their forward exam, and the other teachers looked at the PALs. But the older teachers then got together as a team, and they tried to find patterns in what can we work on from the forward exam. And actually, like 3-5 and then 6-8, each of the grade levels had a kind of similar patterns. So from there, we built our building goals. But if you want to go to the next slide. So here's our goal. And we actually are focusing on math and reading at the same time. So by 2024, the number of students in advanced and proficient categories in math and reading on the forward exam will increase by 10%. Now, we understand that doesn't include the younger students, so that's why we created the building goals, and then I'll show you the grade level goals. This is more of a wellness goal, but I just wanted you to be aware that that is something that we're working on. So again, more wellness related, but.
Heather, can you clarify just with SEL? I had some board members ask me that too. We often use these terms, SEL.
Sure, yeah, social emotional learning.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just the field connection, so, all right. So if you open up that document, I'm not gonna read all these grade level goals, but Deb, if you can scroll down to the building ones first, the bigger groups, you can see there's a lot of goals here. Okay, right. Oh, sorry, keep going. So right here is the work that the teams did from looking at the forward exam. And I will tell you as a staff, this was probably one of the first times everyone dove into that forward exam data. So they looked at the different patterns and they created those grade level goals. We are still collecting baseline data. They're gonna create their assessments, and then we're gonna measure that as kind of a team. And again, new this year, we put 3 through 5 together because they take the forward exam. So if you go back up now, Deb, from there, each grade level looked at where's my place in meeting the school goal and even the high school goal. So we wanted to focus on 100% of students instead of the growth factor for the grade level goals, because they looked at what do we want all kids to know at that grade level to meet the bigger goals. So this is why that we want all kids included in there. Now, when they do their SLOs, they can focus on the growth of different groups of students. So that's kind of where we are with the grade level and building goals.
Heather just touched on a key component there about it nesting. I know this can look a little overwhelming, but all of these SLOs, these grade level goals, all work towards those building goals. So they're all, you're not working harder necessarily, you're more precision with the work.
And then just some action steps from the elementary school.
Read the back.
So here are some specific things that we're working on. We originally wanted to keep our intervention and enrichment time out of the schedule, the master schedule, with thinking that we'd have a little bit more flexibility to meet the needs of kids who needed reading and math intervention and enrichment. As the school year went on, we realized that was a pretty big scheduling error. So we got together with a small team of us and we put that specific time back in the schedule. So now, like one grade level has 30 minutes of intervention and enrichment time with the support of the reading specialist at that time. So we kind of took it out thinking that was a good idea, but reflected that it was not, and now it's back in. A lot of the teachers at the primary level especially, but I guess across the grade levels, are looking at their own classroom schedule and making sure there's more minutes of literacy and reading and writing in their schedule. For example, in the second grade, we're trying to think of how the staff can support our bigger classroom sessions. So for example, Michelle Abel goes into the second grade classroom every day during reading time and has a reading group. So just trying to be very thinking outside the box with staff resources too during that time to get kids reading. Instructional coaching, you've heard us talk a lot about. Last week, Sam, Tracy, and I went to a student-centered coaching conference, and it brought a lot of clarity to what that looks like, and I think that's going to be a really powerful tool. So student-centered coaching, if you go through like a 4 to 6 week coaching cycle with your instructional coach, they're co-planning with you, they're co-teaching with you, and then they're looking at the assessment data with you to focus on the student learning and the student behavior. So none of the focus of an instructional coach is what the teacher's doing and giving feedback to the teachers. It's let's plan this, let's teach it, and then let's look at the student assessments to figure out what we did. So I think that's going to be really powerful. We're working on increasing collaboration with special education teachers, just again, more communication and how are we supporting students together. And we know at the elementary school with our younger students, we also have to address the behavior concerns. So obviously utilizing our younger students to do that. Many teachers use the adaptable online resources, which means that the students are working at their level, being pushed to the next level on their own. The teachers are more thoughtful about looking at the Forward and Ames web results to work on specific skills. The upper grades especially are focusing on more individual conferences for accountability with reading novels. And then again, like the Guiding Coalition said, we are working on formative assessments to keep to drive our instructional decisions on a regular basis, not that summative. And then we've done this at the elementary for a long time, but we're continuing the meeting every 6 weeks with the interventionists, the teachers, myself, all determining who needs that intervention, who needs that enrichment, and then making a plan for the next 6 weeks. So, any questions?
Not a question, but a comment, and that is I love seeing how everything is flowing towards goals. Everybody is working on the same page.
Yeah, I agree. It feels
I
like
appreciate
very
that.
strategic and
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the important thing to remember is that it's not like administrator talk that has no difference for students. Without goals, you have no idea if you're being successful or not. You're just making it up as you go, right? And so we have goals, and then that in essence, that turns into action, and hopefully students can see, hey, I've been reading a lot today, right? I'm getting better at this, and so, or I've been asked, why has every teacher asked me to present? Now I tell them I have to listen. Like you see a difference in what's happening to students, and then hopefully we can measure that and see if we're being successful.
It was exciting for me to hear the presentation from the Guiding Coalition with the reference to how they got together and looked at the assessments, and then they modified in that grouping piece as a tier 2 instructional component we talked about is looking at the data and grouping students. So this is good work. A lot of people put in the time and the effort to hone their craft and focused on student achievement.
Very good. Other board members, any questions, comments?
So we will be back with a approximately mid-year update here to share related to the goals here sometime after the new year likely.
Sounds wonderful. Item C under information only would be the Health and Wellness Committee update.
Yeah, just a quick reference. So the goals you were presented with tonight are based upon the student achievement goals, as I indicated earlier. The other pillars will also have goals, but we wanted to prioritize the student learning goals for obvious reasons. That's why we're all here, right? So the Gina Martinovich is in the process. I believe they have a committee formed and will be having their first meeting. Mr. Sherwood, Mrs. Friday, is that coming up soon? Yeah, on the 26th. So what took a little bit more time is we rolled it in with our health and wellness, existing health and wellness committee. That's required that we do a yearly report? Or updating?
We haven't updated it for several
Yeah,
years. I
it's-
believe it's a 3-year requirement for food service.
Yeah, so we rolled that into this. It just made sense to not have 2 separate committees meeting. So we had to Gina had to work to bring the required, that actually has requirements of who has to be on that committee. There's a lot of overlap with that. So they will be coming forward with a goals eventually. And as these other pillar goals are established, those will be shared with the board. So the ideal situation here is eventually we're going to have goals in each of those pillars. The community engagement pillar will be based upon the data we got from the community engagement survey, those types of components. So we'll have that data, we'll analyze it, but this was our priority, was the student learning component. So that was just an update of it's coming. And then facilities and finance, we are going to be discussing that committee tomorrow, getting that formed to kind of explore our long-term and short-term facilities needs. Okay.
Any questions or comments for Jason? Okay. Then item D for information is the board requested updates from the business office on insurance.
Hello. So back in June, when I presented our school district's insurance premiums and what was covered and everything, it was brought up that we go out to bid. So I met with 2 people, the USI Insurance Services, Katie Van Dyken, and Tim Patterson of Anthony and Associates. The one I had an in-person meeting with, the other I had telephone, 2 telephone conversations with. And they both confirmed what my initial comments were to you, was that there's just a finite number of options for insurance companies to offer school districts. And the way school district insurance works is if one agent puts out a request for quote from Community Insurance, who's our carrier, that freezes that company from all other providers. So that's just the way it works. It works that way for anybody that tries to sell insurance under the school district realm. So they talked to me, both of them basically said the same thing about that. So as we go out for quotes from TIC, they quote 3 or 4 of these companies inside immediately. So when Derek Peterson is quoting our insurance for workers' comp, he's going to 3 other companies that can sell school insurance. So it's a little different than when you do your car insurance, you go to State Farm, you go to Farmers, you go to Progressive, and you get 3 different quotes. Well, the way it works under a school insurance company agent is that that person then can quote all these different places, and then it freezes those companies until the school district makes a choice. So if we would switch from TIC, the insurance company, goes to say Ansay and Associates or USI and Associates, already every company that we use is froze to them. They can't access it to get another quote for us. There's some ways around that if you'd ever want to do that, but I'll get a little bit further here, and it was kind of suggested not to. Also, if we do change our insurance companies, our insurance, go to a different type of agency, the negative effect on our workers' comp is pretty significant, because we would go from a 36-month or a 3-year look back on our claims to a 45-month look back. And we're almost to the end of one catastrophic claim that we had, and hopefully our mod rate's gonna go from a 1.45, which it is this year, back down to 1, because we've had very little claims since that one big claim 3 years ago. So Tim Patterson, who has been in the insurance industry for years, he himself has 30 different school districts that he does cover insurance for. He told me, and he put this in an email to me, that at this time, I would not recommend trying to market your insurance in the middle of a policy term. An insurance contract is an annual agreement, and there could be penalties assessed if you cancel midterm. So that would be if we'd switch like January 1. So I did look at all of our insurances, and that is another thing they write into school insurance policies, is there's penalty, and usually the penalty is the minimum of the annual payment. So you're gonna pay the annual premium regardless if you stick with that company or not. If there was a default of some kind on your insurance carrier, for example, if our workers' comp accident fund, there was some kind of a default in their services, we could get out of it, but that would be the only way you could get out of the contract. He also made the comment that, and I'm not gonna read all of this to you, but basically the way that TIC and DARE have our insurance coverages set up are very good. The fact that we have the $10 million, he really liked that we still had a $10 million non-aggregate limit. Meaning that if we had a $10 million claim today, we'd have a $10 million claim tomorrow. And he made it sound like not too many carriers can get that negotiated. He feels that Derek Peterson of TIC is a great representative to his clients, and that TIC is doing great with their property values and rates compared to other carriers. Most property carriers right now, property values are increasing 11 to 12%, and ours only went up 5%. And the dividend rate we're getting right now is really good. So I feel that we should stay with TIC, since they're going out and doing all the bids for us anyway. But if there's ever a problem with their service or their coverage, of course, I would come to Mr. Knox and the school board to let him know, and at that point we would, look to get out from under the wing of TIC.
Any questions?
Okay, and then the only other thing I had was, back in March, if you recall, we had done a survey of our staff to see what their feelings were toward the opt-out for health insurance. This is a refresher for everybody. If you weren't on the board at the time, we offered to staff a $5,000 opt-out if they have other insurance coverage, whether it's spouse, military, they may still be on their parents' tax return. So we offered that out to staff. This year was our first year for that. And currently, well, not as of today, but as of when I prepared this on September 21st, we had a net savings of a little over $38,000. And where our survey projected us was about $76,700, so we hit about 50% of that. And I think it's important to know that there was 2 of our people that were waiting that didn't finish off the fiscal year, so then the full impact of their savings was also not realized. But so far, I feel that it's a good option. And I think it's drawing some of the younger kids that are still on mom and dad's insurances, because they would get an extra $5,000 for a little while until well, maybe they would be forced into go on insurance.
Those feisty kids.
I
In this world,
think,
nothing
I
calm kids,
feel
huh?
that it was a very good move on the school board's part, they're not losing any money on it, and I feel that it's a good option to have out there for new staff.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
If they didn't finish out the year, would there be even a greater savings for us in this?
Well, no, because then they're getting replaced with somebody else that probably takes the coverage. So, for example, if we had somebody leave and they were here the full year, they'd get the $5,000. If they're only here for part of that time, say they're only here 6 months, they'd only get $2,500. Where then that savings versus $25,000 savings to us for a family policy or single policy is like $11,000, we would only save half of that. So I kind of measure that apples to apples that way. But a lot of times those people are getting replaced by somebody who will take the insurances.
Or long-term subs lots of times too, right?
Yes, we could do that. Right now, we don't have any long-term subs in that situation, but we have in the past that it could impact it, yes. And I don't measure those savings. I don't measure the savings of we're short a custodian, we're short a childcare worker. I'm not measuring those savings because they're not real, because it's not an opt-out situation or a health insurance situation. It's just there's nobody there to do their situation.
Just one ask, and you don't need to have it tonight by any means, but I think the ask when we did it was point in time. So like when we made the switch, what was the point in time savings or cost to the district? So, I mean, I think it's super helpful to also see that, it looks like it might be a great recruitment tool of people, so there were multiple things, but wondering if you could provide just that point in time. So
Like as of July 1?
yeah, so as of July 1, if we wouldn't have done the new path, what was our cost? And with it, who moved, and then we didn't pay their health insurance, but all of the additional $5,000, so that point in time. Does that make sense?
Right, so you're asking after the open enrollment period and what
And
each
closed it.
person, right, so as
Right.
of July 1, if everyone were still here for the full fiscal year, what would the financial impact be of just those people, is what you're asking? As of July 1st.
Compared to June 30th. So June 30th, this was our cost for people who chose to take our health insurance.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
July 1st, this was our cost because
There's other movement in that though too, because we have some people that maybe went from single to family, so that's not measured. Plus,
sure,
we had 2 policy options.
correct. But
So
but
there
they
are
weren't-
other measurements, I know what you're asking for, but there will be variables in those numbers.
So you're just asking for gross numbers,
I'm
right?
just asking for point in time, fiscally, when we made this change, because in my opinion, from that day forward, you can't compare. Because I have no idea if you were gonna take it, not gonna take it, and it's a great recruitment tool, so I am not suggesting we didn't make the right decision. But I think the ask was point in time, did we increase, what was our fiscal implication in the change? And we had a projected fiscal implication of people we thought weren't and were gonna take it, plus the $5,000. My ask is what actually was it? And what you got here isn't, because it's got new
It's for all the
projections
new
in it.
hires
Yeah.
through, yes,
Yeah.
through, yes.
And I don't think that if I just take that out, that that's the number.
No,
Right, because that would actually
that
look
would not be the.
bad. So I don't think that that's the number. So that's kind of when we approved it, that was the ask, to my understanding. So again, I don't expect it tonight at all, but if you could just give us that one point in time, that just helps kind of.
Yes, I will consider that.
Yeah, to see the value in it. So in the point in time. And again, I think there's other value in our recruitment tool and other things. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Okay, there's no other questions. We'll move on to agenda item number 10, which is discussion and action items. Item A is the human growth and development instructional scope and sequence.
So I did not receive any comments or questions in the last month. I don't believe Mr. Dodd has either. I think we have the board on what they decide.
Discussion. Mr. Sherwood, I think that the process that, and I wasn't part of the process, we have 2 board members who were part of the process, but it appears that the process was inclusive.
I would say, based on my experience, having only monitored one of these processes, that the committee did a fantastic job of bringing their opinions, but also doing so in a very professional manner. Having met 6 times over the course of 2.5 months, after work days, that was a lot to ask. I think they did a fantastic job of making sure that all their decision-making was based on not necessarily personal views, what's best for our students and our community, and that's what we consistently made our voting based off of, and that's what we presented.
So my understanding is there were votes on individual things being included.
Correct.
And it wasn't always unanimous votes.
No, consensus decision-making model is what we chose to make.
I actually believe though that on some of the more questionable items that people had different feelings on, the product that was presented at the end, I actually think everyone had consensus on it. Like, we're okay with maybe not exactly what I would put together if I wrote it myself with no other input, but I feel really good about everybody's voice being heard. So I felt by being on the committee that even though there were some votes, like yes, no, like everyone really came around at the end of like feeling good about the final product.
Chris, what was your thoughts and experiences?
Well, we had a real good group of individuals that each had different opinions, different ideas. And the nice thing was that each one of them were able to articulate their thought process. And that allowed each and every one of us to consider the big picture in our minds. And I guess overall, I felt that, as Julie said, we came together at the end and pretty much all decided that we really liked the finished product.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2023-2026 Human Growth and Development Instructional Scope and Sequence.
Is there a second?
Also,
It's been moved and seconded to approve the 23-26 Human Growth and Development Instructional Scope and Sequence. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item B, employee handbook updates. First of all, we have the hourly sick leave pay.
that was actually approved prior by the board, and we just, well, it was oversight that it wasn't included in the handbook update, so we're bringing it back just for inclusion.
Okay, and the teacher sick leave pay?
So,
Same.
and I'll let Pam chime in on this, so we looked at, we removed,
We removed the
200.
maximum amount of days to just, because like people who were retiring, we were putting the hours for the days in there, otherwise the days are just like lost, they're gone.
Yeah.
So we just removed the max.
and we were well over that, what the policy indicated.
Right, and it didn't-
We were well over it, so we thought we would recommend removing that language because, as Pam said, Otherwise, the days are just lost. And the idea behind the sick bank is to have those days available for those situations where employees needed them, so.
Do board members have any questions, comments? There's one question, again, fiscal impact.
Well, so we do not pay out post-retirement benefits related to sick days for staff. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that obviously if there are more days that are utilized by employees, there is a cost for the sub for covering those days. So there is a fiscal impact beyond those 200 days if we were to have more than 200 days in there. However, I would tell you on the side of having, we've talked about one of our pillars is attracting and retaining employees. Both of the sick bank, now the hourly employee sick bank has been utilized a couple of times already just since the board approved it. Yeah?
Just once.
Oh, just one? I was thinking two. Okay, I could be wrong.
I think
I'll
the
defer to
hourly
Pam.
is just once, but, there is no fiscal impact unless somebody petitions and is awarded the days as well.
Right.
So the
there
county determines if the days are awarded.
And there isn't always, a replacement person for the person that wants the time either. So we could have an hourly person that asks for off, but there may not be anyone, a sub to fill that position anyway.
And we could have one of our district subs could potentially fill a position that we're already paying.
Correct.
So but there could be a fiscal impact related to, those days if we got to the point where we're using beyond those days. Yes.
Do we ever have a situation where we can't find a sub?
For hourly people, occasionally, yes.
More so for hourly
It is
professional
challenging for
positions.
the hourly positions to find substitutes, yes.
So
Like
who
custodial
fills
or
that-
kitchen
who
staff.
fills that in?
The other people that are doing the job
Yeah.
have to usually work overtime, or they just get by without maybe doing a task or two that week or whatever.
Yeah. So for custodial, kitchen staff, those areas. We do our best, we post positions, but sometimes we just aren't able to find folks, so those folks have to pick up extra duties.
One more question. Has there been any, we've struggled here and there with, filling positions. And it seemed like that's been going on for some time. Have we noticed any increase in interest? Does it seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel here?
We
I
are,
would say yes.
this year, professional staff, we went into the year fully staffed. And the answer is yes, and actually Mary Ann and I were at the WASB regional meeting. And during that meeting, we were sitting at a table with representatives from the Stevens Point School District, one of whom works with teacher education at the college level, had articulated, Mary Ann, was that they had over 300 prospective graduates in the College of Education. So we're seeing an increase in prospective educators coming out. There are still going to be areas that are hard to fill, certain content areas, but yeah, I believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, what are we always going to deal with here in Pittsville is geographics, housing, certain components. However, I do believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to see
Our
kind of the
hourly
rebound.
as well, I think. We've had multiple applications
Yeah.
for some open positions recently, so I think it's a much better outlook than it was a year ago.
As the board had indicated, you wanted us to explore non-fiscal ways to attract and retain employees, right? Which there are, like talk about cash in lieu of insurance. PTO has been a hugely popular thing with staff thus far. Those types of things, word of mouth and in the working environment and climate. It's something we see as a theme coming out in give you a little taste of our staff engagement and student engagement, is that the experience here in Pittsville is what we use to attract people. And then once we get them here, we keep them, we tend to keep folks once we get them here. So there's still a challenge as a small rural district, but I feel like we have a lot to offer and we'll continue to offer things that we can use to attract more persons for these positions.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion. This is a pretty low risk motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the updates for the January second, repay and future sick leave pay.
Is there a second? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the updates to the employee handbook effective July 1st, 2023. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item C, first reading of updates to policy 111, school district goals.
That is updated with our new pillars/goals. First reading for that. And then human growth and development will be the same. Policy mirroring the work that's been done up to date.
Okay. So,
I don't have any questions to move this forward.
okay. So we'll move those forward for approval at the November meeting. If they do have any suggestions, please contact Jason. Okay, item E, third Friday of September count. That grid with all the little boxes.
Shout out to Deb. For Deb uploaded, we're gonna ignore the grid for right now because Deb created a beautiful little template that was very Jason friendly, I like to call it, so it's a little easier. Because I'm the one who has to try to explain this after being tutored by Deb this afternoon, because I'll be honest with you, this is not intuitive the way they calculate this, and it makes zero sense. So I don't know if we could come up with something that would do a better job. So the column you see on the left, the attending the school district, Deb, can you put your cursor over that number on the left? Yep, that's, pardon my language, butts in the seat. That's our third Friday count with butts in the seat, okay? Now, what's confusing is when you look at the DPI calculation, that confuses folks, right? Because it says, holy cow, we're down 24 students. So down below is the best way to explain it. So there's some good things happening here. And if you just looked at the raw numbers, here's the good things that are happening. Our open enrollment in students are up, and our open enrollment out students that live within our district boundaries that are going to another school district are down. Those are both good things. However, the way the funding formula works, you do not get, for open enrolled in students, we don't get full funding for them. The host or the home district gets to keep a portion of that. I believe, Pam, the number this year, 7,900 is what we get.
I think it's 83, 85.
83 of the
8,500,
11.
something like that.
So the host district keeps a chunk of that money, even though you're educating the students, you don't get all the money. It's same for our students that leave and go elsewhere. So the frustrating part of that is that, as you can see by our open enrollment in folks, we have kids who want to come to Pittsville to go to school, which is what you should want, is you want to attract students. Well, however, the funding does not correlate to that where you would get full funding for those students. So that's where we saw the number, why it shows our numbers down. We actually increased open enrollment in and decreased open enrollment out, and that actually worked to come up with a deficit from the 544 down to the 520. Okay, so good things, more kids coming in, less kids going out. The butts in the seat number, why did that happen? The reality is we had a graduating class of 51. I mean, 40, yeah, I was way off on that. 42 was based primarily on the 42, and then we have lower numbers that are primary levels coming in right now. I think I've said this before when we looked at our enrollment. People just aren't having more kids right now. Like if we're sitting around waiting for those large Catholic families with 15 kids, it's not happening anymore. They're just, people are having less kids. I'm sorry, my grandparents had 15 kids. My mom was one of 15. So I always use that reference, right? So I guess that would be one of the things that I thought was better left unsaid in the public board. But we're not going to see more of these families that are bringing 8 or 9 kids into the district. What you're looking at is you're looking at trying to keep your students that are in your boundaries, keep them from open enrolling out, and draw kids in, which are things that we've obviously tried to focus on addressing with our strategic plan and other things we're doing as a district, like promoting what we do here, because we do a lot of wonderful things. So I think we've talked about too, is there are certain student populations, demographics within our community where we feel like, we had talked about Hispanic students last year. We felt like with some of our local employers, we felt like those numbers were low, they were up this year, that we had more students coming in this year. So the numbers, despite looking at that raw data saying that's concerning, it is. I mean, declining enrollment, that's pretty much indicative statewide, which you can see is declining enrollment. Just we saw at the Rural Schools Convention, Mariana and I last year, they had a wonderful presentation. The gentleman with the closing speech put up a graphic of showing that, people say, well, rural schools are, declining, that people are leaving, it's just, people are having less kids, is what it's coming down to. So we're seeing a statewide and nationwide trend, but some good things to look at from this data, and we're going to continue moving in the, in the positive direction of bringing more kids in and hopefully less going out.
And does this then filter into the revenue we're getting for the next school year or for this current school year?
These numbers get recalculated on the revenue limit worksheet.
Okay.
So for example, a 4K student doesn't count as one student, it counts as 0.6.
So what did we project what did we project our number to be with the revenue we were getting? And did we project?
Back in June, when I did the budget, you mean?
Yeah,
I used last year's number.
the 544.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, not that, the last year's revenue limit number, which I believe, off the top of my head, like 534, 533, something like that, it calculated to be.
Pam, what did you say that the cost that we received per student within district?
Within district is $11,000 this year,
Per student?
per student.
Yeah.
That's in the revenue limit, maximum revenue.
For resident students.
For a resident student.
Now, you said that if we got a resident that goes to a different school district, we only get if we have open enrollment student from outside of our district come in, we get lesser.
Correct, we get about 8,500, I believe it is.
So we get about
Unless if they're a
2,500.
non-IEP student.
So it's open enroll in.
And then if we lose one, then then we would still get the difference there.
Yeah, we keep 2,500 for those students, and then the district they open enroll to gets that 8,500.
All right, thank you.
It's a good question. That's why this is, if you just look at the numbers, it can be kind of confusing, but
I kind of missed the chart you had earlier that I was looking at this afternoon, because that one had numbers. And kind of a scary thing when I was figuring out when the sixth graders are seniors, we're down to 143 students in high school.
Yeah.
So, it's something that long range, it's not good.
well, I would caution this is that kids come and go. Numbers do change, but that is the reality that certainly if you're projecting the numbers out that.
Well, and just this particular year, I mean, it's $250,000 between last year's count and this year's count at $11,000 a kid, right?
Well, there is a three-year rolling
average
average to soften
rolling
that.
average, we're technically down 5 students.
Okay.
The 3-year rolling
It's
average.
designed to soften it a little bit. because that can
Gotcha.
be-
Well, I was like, wow, like how does, that's why I asked that
Yep.
question. Okay, thank you, that's very helpful.
And I would also tell you that it kind of accentuates that importance too, we talked about with the 4K changes and stuff, is that if you don't gather those students in 4K and they go to another district, they're not likely to come back. Like of those 50, do we have 52 or 54 open roll out?
54.
54 in Deb, I think you and I had the conversation that the majority of those students have never even set foot in the Pittsville School District into a classroom. So the key is to get them, right, to get them in here and then become happy with the services they're getting in the district, so.
I'll make the motion to approve the September 15th, 2023 third Friday count of 551 actual students in attendance reported to WISE data for student accountability, and 521 reported to DPI for funding and revenue and tuition purposes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the third Friday of September count. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item F, set the date and time for the 23-24 budget revision and tax levy certification special meeting. Folks, open your calendars.
So what's the period of time
A year
for
and a half.
options?
We have to do it.
Right, so when will we know and
Well,
when?
the earliest we would probably have the numbers and be ready to do it would be Wednesday the 25th. So when we looked at our calendars, Wednesday the 25th, if you want to do it in the morning, like at 7 o'clock. And then Thursday the 26th or Tuesday the 31st were available mornings that we had available, but I mean, of course, it all, you know, what you have available as well.
So I believe last year we did a 7:30 a.m. meeting.
It was 7. It was 7.
7, okay. So 7 a.m. The dates again were the 25th, 26th, or 31st, I believe.
Yes.
I'm available all 3 days.
Yeah, I can do the 25th or 26th, I cannot do a 7 a.m. on the 31st.
It works for me. That's nice.
So shall we say, Wednesday, October 25th at 7 a.m.
Deb, can you send an invite out for that? Thank you.
Does that happen in this room?
It did, yes,
Is there an ACD having in this room?
at 7.
No.
We will be done likely in,
I thought last year we did it in the street.
did we? No, we didn't
One
here, because
year
this
we
is
did
the
it.
board meeting.
Oh, okay.
It will not be like a
Half
One
an
of these
hour,
meetings.
45 minutes tops.
tops. What time would they be coming in at?
One school starts at 7:50.
That should not be an issue.
No,
This room might be set up kind of weird.
that's fine.
We're used to that. Make it work.
Is this a meeting that will be televised?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, item G, start college now. Applications for spring semester. We have a presentation from Mrs. Peterson and Dr. Watson.
Logan. Did you learn that, Joe? So you remember that we had kind of altered, per Jason's guidance, how we did these. We wanted to share trends about how we do, how our students are doing for enrolling in the Start College Now programs, largely mid-state and the ACCP classes. So here's a quick reminder of what that means. These are college courses taken by Pittsville High School students in their junior, senior year, they can be 16 years or older, to earn college credit while they're in high school, so earns high school credit simultaneously. The district pays for the classes, the students only have to pay for the books, materials, for ECCP anyway. They make room to attend the class on schedule, sometimes that's case and credit scheduled by Mrs. Peterson, and then they gotta do the work. These classes have been offered for many years. They're increasing popularity, although you'll see here that we're experiencing a bit of a spring dip in this. So let you absorb those numbers. These are the classes that they're taking right now, and these are the classes that they're asking to take in the spring. The reason it's 5, it's 4 students, one wants to take 2 classes, and so it's 5 classes. These are the classes that they're taking now on the left, that they're asking to take on the right. You can see the intro to psych is quite popular. Remember that we don't have AP psych at the high school anymore, and so they can't get college credit for psychology unless they do it through ECCP or SCN. And then a lot of the classes you would get from in-state, and then some manufacturing. We're seeing less interest in the nursing classes through here. That's more for the ECS program, but some. And then over the right, you can see that there's a pretty wide range for SCN for spring.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Do we not offer accounting or anatomy and physiology anymore?
Oh, of course they do, but those are high school classes. And so these would get them college. Yeah.
Oh, so that has changed, that, because in the past, if the high school offered it, we couldn't take it?
High school is offering an equivalent class, and so when we had AP Psych, that would be equivalent, because it would be the exact same
Sure.
class. These classes are not equivalent, because they're not.
Well, that's fantastic for students.
I would recommend taking high school in that, than for day college in because it's tough class. And remember the diversity studies class has a Pittsville High School addendum, and what we require on there to make that a class that, we have. Some notes that I had on this, they remain very popular, despite that spring dip that happens. What we assess there is that our AP classes have increased in popularity, and that we've also, the juniors and seniors, a lot of them are taking so many, they're running out of room in their schedule. So I believe it's gonna be a temporary dip. The nursing classes are still popular, just maybe less in the spring than they were last year. I want to point out the second, I didn't put a bullet there, the second bullet point. This is one way that we can make sure that we are aggressively attacking any kind of equity gaps that might exist. As long as we pay for this, doesn't matter the size of the house you come from, you can get college credit when you're in high school. And we have students that are at 15, we have one student at 21 credits. That's a freshman year, that's nearly done. You talk about how expensive college is, right? And the fact that you have most of that freshman year done, you have the momentum sustained, and you're not getting that college debt, that's a wonderful thing to do for students. And then another thing, if you want to figure out how we're doing as a district, our students do very well in these classes, so they average in the spring, they had a 3.75 GPA. In summer, we had a couple of students take summer classes, they did 4.0, so they tend to do very, very well. I think Marissa's got a little more on that.
Yeah, and I think that's the equity piece, so some of the students that we are having apply for these spring courses, we have one who is qualifying as homeless, we have a student working 2 jobs to support basically herself, and those are the students that are engaging in these classes, which is really exciting. And they're being very successful in them. Really starting those conversations about like, what are you doing after high school and how is this helping you be successful, which is kind of that next slide is just we're trying to get some feedback from some students to really share the impact that it's making on their education. Basically in a nutshell, if they were taking these classes now, they might not actually ever be taking them. And so having that foot in the door so that they're really starting college saying, I'm capable of college classes. I've had some resources in high school to help me, test that out, and I've done well with it, so then they feel like they have a lot of potential. And then it goes to great things. And having access to them junior and senior year is very critical for those students who may not be able to explore that on their own.
We're asking for 4 students to take 5 of the same classes and 1 student to take 1 ECCG class for this one.
How do we go about like making sure everyone knows about like, the program? Do you speak to the kids individually, or you just put an announcement out?
Yeah, so juniors and seniors are invited at the beginning, well, actually, I guess in the fall and then in the spring, like advertising if they're interested to come and listen, and I speak about it, Kate previously has spoken about it, to get interest, and then we work with them individually to fill out the paperwork for it. A lot of it, I think, in the past maybe starts by word of mouth, like, oh, you got to do that, so I would like to do that. Again, making sure that we aren't forgetting about the students who maybe don't listen to the announcements and don't hear that. And so a lot of it comes out, I think, as I'm learning when you're building their schedule. You're finding these students who are like, I don't really want anything here. Starting those conversations freshman, sophomore year, so you're building a schedule to say, hey, get these out of the way so that you're meeting our requirements, so you're eligible for a Start College Now or ECCP, and then like look where you can go. By the time you're senior, you're already sitting well into your freshman year, or you're already almost with an associate's degree. So I think it's in both individual, and that's something coming in new too, that now that I've had my first round of this, I feel like I can think about ways to make sure that it is being spread to everyone and making sure that everyone understands what FCN and ECCP mean, and making sure that we're not forgetting anybody who should take the opportunity.
And the state's been a great partner with that.
Yes.
Carly comes in and works really hard with our students one-on-one with them to make sure they fill it out the right way, they're picking the right classes. And now that the seniors automatically enroll in mid-state too, it's helping them to be more seamless for us.
And Carly's there once a month, and so knowing like maybe somebody didn't know about this, she's here having these conversations, already starting thoughts for people doing, summer fall for next year.
Quick question, remind me what ECCP stands for?
So Early College Credit Program, and then
Okay.
Start College Now.
Yeah.
ECCP is any university, and then Start College Now is strictly, the Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
The same thing, but different terminology, basically.
And it's officially to approve 5, right? Because there's 4 students, but it's 5 classes.
Right, first, that's the end.
Perfect, so I'll make a motion to approve 4 students, 5 classes for Start College Now applications for the spring semester.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Start College Now program for the students. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So, do we need another one? Or, yes, I thought so. Okay, early college credit, spring semester.
I'll make a motion to approve one student for the early college credit program applications for the spring semester.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the early college credit for spring semester. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11, the legislative update. Oh my, there's actually lots going on this week.
How excited.
I'm excited. This is stuff that's so exciting.
This is where we cut to a commercial. Then come back.
Let's bring it on.
Well, yeah, there is a lot happening right now, both on the committee level and also the legislature is going to be on the floor this week, and there's going to be some votes coming up. I'm just going to hit some of the real interesting things. So the Assembly Committee on Education has a bill up that is related to designating athletic sports and teams be operated, if they're operated and sponsored by public schools, that participation is based on the sex of the participant, not the gender identity, okay? So that is up in committee and that will be on the floor. There's also a really good one that we already do, and that's, I think I mentioned it at the last meeting, requiring that schools acquire and train staff on using this anti-choking device, which we already have.
We even have another one now because actually through that legislation, they give you a free one. So Gina applied for another one, so we're gonna have another one on the site. And we had, Gina opened it up to staff to purchase it them individually. And I think 54 devices were purchased by staff individually out of their own pockets to take home.
Wow.
Yeah, so grandparents and parents bought them to keep it home. We have one at home. I mean,
Okay. Good
so,
idea.
yep.
Another one is directing school boards to provide some type of instruction on Hmong Americans and Asian Americans. I think that's good. And then there's some other ones. Those are the Committee on Education. And all of those are also going to go to the floor this week. So. One of the interesting things to keep in mind is that right now the legislature, they're in their fall session that includes a lot of committee work and floor sessions, and they'll be done by deer season because we have to have our priorities. And then they'll have some downtime. They'll still be working on things, but they'll give them more opportunities to meet with constituents. And so something to think about is inviting Senator Teston and Representative Vandermeer to come to visit with us again, to really, for us to share some of the district's concerns related to funding. I'd like to dig a little deeper into the reading stuff. I mean, it seems to me there was 40 million in the budget. I'd like to know where that 40 million is going. But also to talk about the discrepancy in funding between the open enroll in and out.
Yep. And the 4K, another one, not to interrupt, that is gonna impact us is that with us offering all day 4K, 5 days a week, I think I articulated this when we were proposing that, there's no financial incentive to doing that for districts, because the maximum you can be funded is 0.6 for 4K students. That's something too that, talking to many superintendents, I talked to a local superintendent today that another local district is exploring and likely to go to 5 day 4K for many of the same reasons we did. And he was lamenting the fact that, they're financially, they were gonna have to hire 2 full-time staff to do this, and knowing that they would have a net negative impact because of that. Those are little things in a district our size that are game changers. Another one, the mental health grant was very frustrating that it went from a competitive grant that we had received for the previous 2 years, where we had received approximately $80,000. We applied again, because that was the understanding was you had to apply. Our application gets in and all of a sudden it comes out that, we were making it a non-competitive grant and it's being dispersed statewide based upon enrollment. So we went from $80,000 to $16,000, and districts who did not apply for it got more money that have larger enrollment than us. And it just, those are things that are very frustrating. And I will say this, like the WRSA is an advocate for districts like us, is that we need to be more involved in these little things like that. Those are huge, huge things that impact small districts that, it may have seemed like a good idea, like, well, let's get everybody this money, but there are districts like us that it was literally the way we were able to fund a 3rd school counselor in this district for 2 years. So very, very frustrating, but once again, as Mary Ann said, we need to be willing to step up and articulate these concerns and share them with our legislators,
So if Jason was to reach out to the senator and the representative, would board members like to be involved in these meetings? I mean, quite frankly, they're usually going to be there during the day. And some people don't have the ability to get away and participate. How does the board feel about this? What guidance can we give Jason in terms of setting something up?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I try my hardest to be there. It's just gonna be a matter of if they can get their schedules together at the same time.
I think their schedules would be more important.
You're
than
right,
ours.
right.
If some people could be there, I would try to go too, but I can't guarantee.
Yeah, I'd say.
But I would, if we have a list of issues we put together, like we do with Jason. So at least if I have questions, we're gonna be asked, and just not going in.
Right.
To say.
And one question I would ask for some input from Deb on, because I'm still kind of new at this, thinking of a quorum, and I know you can post at no business, but I think it would be inevitable, we would be discussing district business, and if we had a quorum there, yes, do you see where I'm going with?
But we just posted that.
Yeah.
So you're posting like a special meeting?
See, that's the key is, I know we can post if we say there will be no business conducted, but in this situation, it would be inevitable, we would be discussing business related, so it would have to be like a public, technically it'd be a public meeting then, yes? I'm talking out loud here, obviously, and thinking out loud.
I think it would be best to go that way.
Yeah.
If
So not
there's,
undoable,
if there's 3 or more.
3 or more.
3 or more, because that's,
Right.
but I wouldn't, if you're the 3rd person or the 4th person, don't use that as a reason not to attend.
Something more.
I mean, unless for some reason they would see a difference, I think it would be fantastic if people from the community actually came and listened to
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Because that would educate them too. I mean, like, so I'm not worried about it being a public meeting, that we would be meeting with them. Because I actually think that would be fantastic to have more education to everybody.
We might be surprised on the amount of people that would show up or something.
People might want to meet them.
Schedule, and I would have potential of even doing it somewhere other than the district, like cafe or something to go.
They both had tours of the school, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The other thing that could be interesting is seeing if, this could be coordinated with them speaking to any of the classes. You know, either a high school class or, you know, the fourth graders, it's the big Wisconsin year. Plus, Nancy dropped off some blue books for me and said, give them to people, and I can think of no better people to give them to than my colleagues here on the board. So, and she brought one for you.
Yep.
Okay. I think she brought one for the library.
She dropped off 10 of them last week.
Oh, okay, great, yeah.
Thank you.
So, so there's a blue book, and if you've never had a blue book before, I'd be happy to give you a 2-minute instruction or story of the blue book after the meeting. So, anything else legislatively that folks, comments, questions, anything like that? I would trust that we would have time at our November meeting during the legislative report to maybe frame some issue, or at least bullet points of issues. I mean, we talked about them verbally, but I think it would be good to bullet point some things.
Perhaps we could add those under future agenda items for the next agenda, get a list started of those. I know we have some already, like the food service presentation we were planning for December. I talked to Chef Matt about it already. Director Sherwood will be coming in November to give a presentation on special education services, the IEP process.
Okay. Well, and quite frankly, I think bullet pointing some things is gonna be not more than 5 minutes.
Got it.
I mean, I don't see it as a long discussion.
Yep.
I see it as more like boom, boom, boom. This is what we're gonna talk about.
Okay.
Okay, should we plan on that for November,
Sounds good.
along with Chef Matt, is in November?
Director Sherwood,
Ah,
IEP process and special education services.
that's right, okay.
And then, and I think what would be maybe beneficial with this, the future agenda items, is we can actually do a month by month future agenda, like if we know certain ones are gonna come, we can list them as December will be a food services presentation. November will be, you know, the special education process, IEP process, and then, you know, to try to space things out so we're not,
Sure.
We know the ones where we're gonna have fiscal type presentations,
Yeah.
you know, the budget and stuff that we wanna try to avoid some of those meetings too.
Well, and under, I mean, we can put that Leggy visit, just under legislative update.
You said we were gonna shoot for November meeting with that?
No, December.
December after.
Yeah,
After the session.
after deer season, yes. Okay, so I think we covered both item 13 and item 12, no?
No.
Legislative update, and then we went into
Yeah.
13. So we have public comments. We don't have any public, so no comments tonight. So I would entertain a motion to move into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 paren 1 paren C.
You missed one.
I did?
Future agenda items.
Oh, no,
In case
we
there are
already
any-
talked about that.
Are there any that maybe that you wanted that we?
Yeah.
That we.
I would just like, once again, put on record, the need to discuss the grant specialist for our district and possibility of a full-time SRO.
And I know, I believe, Chris, you had mentioned school safety in general, and the board had expressed an interest that we could go over our safety audit that was done last year in digital mapping, so maybe something on the realm of school safety in general.
Sure. Yeah.
That we can bring forward a presentation and share the audit data.
And then you had some stuff also that I think you had to talk with Jason about, to screen prior.
We kind of did.
We did, okay, so you guys got the school safety
Yep.
thing, all taken care of. So, we will put those on the agenda for the future. Okay, so November will be Director Sherwood and the legislative visit agenda. Could we cover one of those other two, probably not the SRO, we covered the grant specialist discussion.
So would we want that to be on as it would be are you looking for some kind of a presentation, or do we want to have a board discussion? No action necessarily with it, so it just would depend on where you want to place it. I'm also envisioning it could be some of these things could be worked in my district administrator update too. Or similar to what we did with Act 20 tonight. It's whatever the board would like to, I just need to have some direction on where you would like to see that, and if you want to have, the board just wants to have a discussion, or if they want me to bring back information related to a topic or
I
something.
think the pros and cons of, like, this is especially.
Yeah,
right.
Like the pros and cons of.
I'm-
And a discussion.
Yeah.
And discussion as well.
So let's add that as, could that go under information? Because it'd be information only, no action. Yes, that would give me time to prepare information to bring back.
And then maybe,
It's one a month, not both the same.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
It's a lot of information.
okay.
We're gonna try to keep these just, we had talked at the board development to 15 minutes, like these presentations, like with Director Sherwood and Chef Matt. There'll be 15 minutes with about 5 minutes for questions. We're gonna try to limit the information. Yes, I can throw something together.
Okay, and so the thing would be, it'd be information only, but it would be like
Discussion.
grant specialist discussion.
Yeah, needs,
Yeah.
pros, cons.
What do other districts do?
Yep,
Could be the,
What are different models?
yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Mhm.
Now are we ready to?
I'll make a motion to move into closed session for the purpose of administrative compensation evaluation.
It's been moved and seconded to convene a closed session, roll call vote.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes,
Rick?
Yes.
Julie? Yes.
we're now in closed session.